Sabhacharan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinta Ki Jai, Krantarachima Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 13, The Appearance of Lord Varaha, Text 5. Shri Shuka Vacha Iti Pravanam Vidaram Vinetam Iti Pravanam Vidaram Vinetam Sahasrashiyashno Charanopadanam Sahasrashiyashno Charanopadanam Pradishtaroma Bhagavat Katayam Pradishtaroma Bhagavat Katayam Praniyamano Munirabhyachashta Praniyamano Munirabhyachashta Iti Pravanam Viduram Vinetam Sahasrashirshno Charanopadanam Pradishtaroma Bhagavat Katayam Praniyamano Munirabhyachashta Shri Shuka Vacha Iti Pravanam Viduram Vinetam Sahasrashiyashnashtaranopadanam Pradishtaroma Bhagavat Katayam Aniyamano Munyad Abhyachashta Shri Shuka Vacha Iti Pravanam Viduram Vinetam Sahasrashiyashnashtaranopadanam Pradishtaroma Bhagavat Katayam Aniyamano Mudirabhyachashta. Can you try? Okay, word-to-word translation. Shri Shuka Vacha. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Iti, thus, Pruvanam, speaking, Viduram, unto Vidura, Vinitam, very gentle, Sahasrashiyashnaha, the personality of Godhead Krishna, Charana, lotus feet, Upadanam, pillow, Parishtaroma, hair standing in ecstasy, Bhagavat, in relationship with the personality of Godhead. Katayam, in the words, praniyamanaha, being influenced by such spirit. Munihi, the sage, abhyachashta, attempted to speak. Translation and purport by Divine Grace of Bhaktivedanta Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, was pleased to place his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura, because Vidura was very meek and gentle. The sage Maitreya was very pleased with Vidura's words, and, being influenced by his spirit, he attempted to speak. Purport. The word Sahasra Shirshnaha is very significant. One who has diverse energies and activities, and a wonderful brain is known as the Sahasra Shirshnaha. This qualification is applicable only to the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna and no one else. The personality of Godhead was pleased to dine sometimes with Vidura at his home, and while resting he placed his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura. Maitreya was inspired by the thought of Vidura's wonderful fortune. The hairs of his body stood on end, and he was pleased to narrate the topics of the personality of Godhead with great delight. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Mandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvetam Savatutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamshta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhyuba Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for coming this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we started a new chapter recently, now taking soon a bit of a different turn. We heard a lot of how Lord Brahma in the previous chapter was, the different difficulties he went through in creation, and yet, yes, on one hand it's the same theme, we still will hear another difficulty as well. That's why Lord Baharadev appears. But yeah, it's obviously then from a bit technical section that we had, then more exciting pastimes come up. And as is many times the case in the beginning of the chapter, we hear the person who at this point is, whom we see who is hearing directly, like many other times obviously we hear from Parikshit Maharaj himself, how he puts forward another question to Shukadeva Goswami, and here we are obviously still in the conversation between Maitreya Rishi and Vidura, and so Vidura at this point is asking on having heard, or like rather, yeah, what he's asking that will tomorrow Maitreya Rishi will start to reply. So yeah, he's asking about Svayambhu Manu, for example, why that's how the previous chapter finished, how Svayambhu Manu and his wife Shatarupa, how they were born from Lord Brahma in a way that it's described can't even tell if it actually came from his body, so in that sense they're considered still the same body, Lord Brahma himself. That's why the first Manu is called Svayambhuva Manu, just like Lord Brahma is Svayambhu, is self-born, because he doesn't have an ordinary material mother, but rather was directly born from the lotus, coming out from the navel of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Similarly, Svayambhuva Manu is still considered on that same level in that sense. And so Vidura was asking now what exactly they did, and so that's how then we start about Lord Varahadev, how he, when Svayambhuva Manu wasn't able to do his duty because of what Hiranyaksha did, but I don't want to go into that. We'll hear a lot on those in the coming classes. But so far we heard on the glories basically of hearing again, and of especially between devotees and about devotees as well, because Vidura is asking here not even directly about Krishna, but what did Svayambhuva, the dear son of Brahma, do after obtaining his very loving wife. So and that's why yesterday it was discussed especially on this topic, then why on hearing about pure devotees is as glorious, or in one sense even more glorious than hearing about directly Krishna himself. And in many ways it's non-different, because as Bhari Bhushan was discussing yesterday, as soon as you hear about the devotees of the Lord, you hear about the Lord himself as well. And similarly, actually, mostly if you hear about Krishna, other than simply hearing about the tattva and his qualities, but if you hear about his pastimes, then immediately he will have his pastimes with his devotees. And so in that sense it's non-different, you'll always hear both. Prabhu gave nice stories on Lord Jagannath, for example, that he has with his devotees, even in more recent years, which are recorded. And so in today's verse, Prabhupada points out in the purport the name which is used here for Krishna, which is not so commonly used, namely Sahasra Shirshna, because that means, as far as I understand, 1,000-headed, which, if I remember correctly, there's specifically actually of Lord Brahma himself. In his planet in Satyaloka, there the Lord is present always as Sahasra Shirshna, as such a 1,000-headed form. But then we might wonder if we hear, for the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, where he is asking, like I guess every one of you knows the pastime, so I won't go into it, but so his aspiration is actually to get a kingdom. So can you wear the mask? Sorry. Greater than even his grandfather or great-grandfather. So there's Lord Brahma, Svayambhuva Manu, Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj. So his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, he's aspiring for. And it's, but if you look in the geography, we discussed that some time ago, actually the pole star Dhruvaloka is below Satyaloka, quite a lot actually. But then how is it greater? It's explained it is greater in the sense that it's actually the personal abode of the Lord within this material universe. So Kshirodakashaya Vishnu is he obviously we know in many forms, in many ways he's present, even in this universe, but particularly, so to say, his residence, spiritual residence within this material universe is Dhruvaloka. And so in that way there he's in a normal Vishnu form as Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, so it's in a more intimate form how he is there with Dhruva Maharaj even now. So in that way that's why it's considered even superior what Dhruva Maharaj achieved even materially, or obviously it's directly related with spiritually, than what Lord Brahma has in Satyaloka with Sahasra Shirshna. And similarly also we know Bali Maharaj, for example, how the Lord agreed then to become his doorkeeper in Sutala, which is even a subterranean planet, but still it's so glorious because the Lord, again in a personal form as Vamanadev, he's there. And it's the more intimate in spiritual life, the more greater it is considered. It's not about like Sahasra Shirshna, 1,000-headed. It's an opulent form, obviously. But so yeah, just a few words on that word. Even though here it's just, I guess, used to show the greatness of how great it then is a Lord who can, if he chooses to, he can have thousands of heads or unlimited heads. But such a Lord, in his original form as Krishna, he chose, when the pastime referred to here is, when Duryodhana was inviting Krishna to a very opulent feast, but Krishna gave him the excuse that one goes to someone's invitation only if one is either actually hungry, which Krishna was not. I mean, he has no need to eat in a material sense, of course, or if one actually loves, that one goes out of love because one out of affection for that person who is inviting him, both of which Krishna didn't have, obviously, because Duryodhana was extremely envious of him and of his devotees, especially of the Pandavas. So that's why instead he then went uninvited to Vidura's home, where then, in great ecstasy, him and his wife, all that they had at that moment was bananas, and then in the ecstasy they didn't even give him the actual bananas, but they gave him the peel instead. But the Lord was so pleased by their loving devotion that it's mentioned here that he even got very intimate, that he actually rested on Vidura's lap, and that's why Vidura is celebrated here. So he placed his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura, and that's why it's celebrated here as Charana Upadanam, as the pillow of the lotus feet of the Lord. And that is actually also this same verse. Today's verse is quoted in Antya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, in 19th chapter, text 70. Because there, similarly, there's one other devotee similarly glorified by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, because that's like the second last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there it gets really in the very intense phase of Mahaprabhu's pastimes, his last pastimes. He came in the mood of, he's Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, but he came in the mood of Srimati Radharani, of his supreme devotee. And so, but fully exhibit this mood he did then, especially in those last years, in residing there in Jagannath Puri. And only very few devotees associated actually mostly then during that time. Previously to so many souls he reached out, and to so many he gave associations of really. But then at that time there was especially Svarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Roy, who were his most closest associates, who were originally Vishaka Devi and Lalita Devi, and so the closest friend of Srimati Radharani, in which mood Mahaprabhu was. And and of course Govinda, Mahaprabhu's personal servant was still there, Govinda as well. But it so went that actually he was so intensely in this ecstatic mood of separation of Krishna that sometimes then at night time, actually he was so absorbed that he would, for example, it is mentioned then there, leading up to this point now of this devotee, that he sometimes would, and his servant Govinda would be just outside the door, and Svarup Damodar Goswami, so they would be able to hear it, that Mahaprabhu was so absorbed in his ecstatic love, of his ecstatic pain of separation of Krishna, that he was out of wanting to go out of the room to search for Krishna, but not being able to, apparently, to open the door, he then ended up rubbing his face against the wall, and for the entire night, for the rest of the night, so that he would bleed and everything. And his devotees outside, they could hear that, so at one point then they went inside Svarup Damodar Goswami and then stopped the Lord and tried to pacify him and so on. But then at one point Svarup Damodar Goswami was considering what something he has to do about it, because obviously on the one hand they understand, yes, it's ecstasy that's experiencing, it's not like material pain as we would see it, but then still they feel also great pain seeing the Lord in any kind of pain, especially on his body, on his transcendental body. So then he came up with a solution. He consulted with other devotees, and then they entreated Mahaprabhu to please accept one devotee to always be with you even during the night, to sleep right next to you. And that was Shankara Pandit. And the Lord agreed, and so consequently Shankara Pandit was then always sleeping at close to the Lord's lotus feet, and so the Lord many times would then end up placing his lotus feet on the lap of, on the body of Shankara Pandit, and then that's why Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami there quotes this verse and says, just as Vidura was celebrated as the pillow of the Lord, also Shankara Pandit also is celebrated there, and he's saying as Prabhu Pada Upadana, as the Upadana is the pillow of the lotus feet of Prabhu, of the master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And yeah, it's actually amazing how, like, it shows, and that's like significant here in this verse. We hear on the one hand this great, unlimitedly opulent Lord Sahasra Shirshna, but he all he is looking for is the whole existence. The only purpose we know is ultimately simply love, is that he can have loving exchanges. Otherwise, he's Atmaram, and everything comes from him, but he wouldn't have a need to expand or create anything. But it's all simply facilities for loving exchanges. And so that shows, like here, how amazing it is then that this most opulent Lord becomes so readily, so intimate with his devotees that he even rests his own transcendental body on a devotee's body. Actually, yeah, even in Krishna book, I read recently a little bit on, we hear obviously also that there it's like, in other sections like here, it's obvious for a good reason, it's celebrated as like something very significant and special, that the Lord would place his body resting on a devotee's body. But then in Krishna Lila, when especially when he's in the age of a younger cowherd boy, there it's like everyday common thing that actually when he's out there in the forest with the other cowherd boys, that it's mentioned when even Krishna and Balaram both, and Balaram also, for example, sometimes would feel transcendentally fatigued, then he would lie down his body resting on the lap of another cowherd boy, and then Krishna would come and quickly and massage his lotus feet, and another cowherd boy would take some peacock feathers or some palm fan, some palm leaves to fan Balaram so that his fatigue would go away, and other cowherd boys who were talented in singing, they would sing very sweetly to please the Lord and please giving relief to their transcendental bodies. And same thing Krishna would do, vice versa. So and that again, that also shows how supreme Goloka Vrindavan is, or even in Vrindavan, how the love there is so intense that the intimacy is so high that there it's a normal thing that Krishna would be so close with his devotees. And obviously we know they are so absorbed in ecstatic love of Krishna that they, by Yogamaya's influence, they don't even know, or at least not think about, that this person is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they simply take him as an equal to themselves, and in that way so naturally deal so intimately with him. But yeah, that is what Krishna wants to give to us. He wants to give to himself to us completely, as yeyata mam prapatyante tam sadava pachamyaham. It's according to how we approach the Lord, in that way he deals with us. So recently I read also on that point of when Chitraketu Maharaj, that's in the 6th canto, 16th chapter, when he gets darshan of Lord Sankarshan, in one of his prayers he mentions this point of how oh, you, my Lord, you to those unalloyed devotees who are free of any material desires, free of any motivations in their worshipping you, to them you yourself give yourself to them, and you're conquered by them, you're conquered by their love. And there in the purport, Prabhupada is saying that because of being conquered by one another, they both, so they means the Lord and the devotees, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. And then he gives the supreme example of that, of this mutual conquering each other, the Lord and his devotees. He gives the example of the gopis, that whenever Krishna would play his flute, he would conquer the minds of the gopis that they couldn't help themselves other than leaving everything we know and running out even in the dead of night trying to meet Krishna. And in the same way, Krishna would not, without seeing the gopis, he was not able to be happy. He could not be happy. So, which again shows how Krishna wants to be conquered by his devotees love. Just as obviously in one of the most famous pastimes of that is Damodar Lila, how Krishna then agrees to be conquered by Mother Yashoda's love, to be bound by her. And so and Prabhupada here in this purport he explains further on, because when we hear about it, okay, it's nice to hear, but then we think, well, that's so far away for us, and impossible at any time. But then actually, what it comes from still is, Prabhupada explains here, is simply if we try to actually engage in pure devotional service, which means free from any other motivations other to try to please the Lord. So Prabhupada is explaining here that when a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, and he's quoting the Anyabhilashata Shunyam from Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service, which is Anyabhilashata Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavritam Anukulyana Krishna no Shilanam Bhakti Ruttamada. That's first of all Anyabhilashata Shunyam, so Shunya, devoid of any other desires or any tinge of, especially of, which generally is the case of karma and jnana, of fruitive mentality, wanting to get some material benefit, or jnana of wanting to rather just become free of miseries and merging with the Lord or the Lord's effulgence. And rather it should be favorable for Krishna and actively cultivated in love. So that's Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service. And Prabhupada is saying here that when a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, so even in Bhagavatam itself, Savaipam Samparodamo Yato Bhaktira Tokshache Ahaitukiya Pratiyata Yayatma Suprasidati. That Ahaituki, if it is without any motive, then his service cannot be hampered by any material condition. Then it also becomes apratihata, uninterrupted. And Prabhupada further explains that therefore a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because, it is then that the Lord, when He sees that no matter what difficulties this devotee faces, and no matter what allurements there would be or any other distractions, He is completely fixed in simply thinking and endeavoring for my pleasure. And that's how the Lord agrees then to be conquered by love, and that's how the basis of then how those amazing relationships of Him ultimately Him with the gopis, but also the gopas and all the other devotees who are pure devotees, how it is then that the Lord gives Himself to them. And also in those prayers of Chitraketu Maharaj to Lord Sankarshan, there was one other nice point I wanted to mention. In terms of the Lord, He wants to be conquered, but also to this purpose there was something. That's the other point I want to mention. So Prabhupada is saying here that Sahasra Shirshana, this name, that it also indicates that one who has diverse energies and activities and a wonderful brain is known as the Sahasra Shirshana. And this is applicable only to the personality of God, Sri Krishna. And this wonderful brain, it reminds me of, in some other parts in Bhagavatam, it's mentioned how Krishna's, Prabhupada is explaining in one purport there, that actually Krishna's brain, so to say, his transcendental brain, that all that his main thought, his main anxiety is he's always thinking about how to deliver all those fallen souls like us. So that's his, as we said, the whole existence is there for loving exchanges with Him, but then the whole material existence is for those who misuse that free will and don't want to have loving exchanges and want to try to be so-called happy separately from Krishna, and which can never be successful because we are constitutionally His eternal loving servants, as we know. But so that's why that is his constant anxiety. Obviously, we know he's always eternally blissful, but then still, as a loving Father, he has this anxiety, and he's always thinking, planning how to deliver those fallen souls, and that's why he gives so many facilities and sends so many of his pure devotees and gives so many different ways of engaging us in bhakti yoga. So that's why this exchange with Chitta-Ketu Maharaj with Lord Sankarshan, he explained, like previously, how this one of those main points of how we are not the doer, how the Lord is always in control, and we should always understand that. And so in one of there, it's mentioned in one. That's actually even as later then, as Chitta-Ketu Maharaj, when he gets cursed by Mother Parvati and appears as Vritrasura in the body of a demon, then we can come back later to that. I can briefly explain, actually, even that shows then, and that's one amazing example of Vritrasura, a great demon, conversing with Lord Indra, the king of heaven, on the battlefield, because it also shows in the theme of today that we see how devotional service is not restricted to any conditions, that the glories of pure devotees and of pure devotional service, they're expressing their bhakti, conversing. It's happening in all kinds of circumstances, and that's one of the most extraordinary ones, where Vritrasura is in the body of a gigantic demon. That's what his name comes from. It Vritra means to cover, so it was mentioned. It covered all the way up to heaven, and and it so happened that then, how much can I tell of the pastime? Anyway, I'll come back to the pastime. I just want to complete this point now of. So in one of those things, so Vritrasura, he's in the body of a demon, but he's a great devotee. He was Chitta-Ketu Maharaj in his previous life. He already personally got the darshan of Lord Sankarshan by the blessings of Narad Muni and Angira Rishi, who instructed him for 7 days to chant one mantra, and he got the darshan of Lord Sankarshan, and as a byproduct before he became the leaders of the Vidyadhara planet there, traveling then and glorifying the Lord with the Vidyadharas there. But so similar as Vritrasura then, in one of the things that he preached to Indra was that he told him that no one is guaranteed of being victorious but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 3.27, Prakriti manani kune karmani sarvashaha ankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate, that only deluded by false ego, the conditioned soul thinks himself to be the doer, but actually everything is carried out by material nature under the three modes. And so Prabhupada is explaining there that the subordinate living entities fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. And therefore one should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. We should simply make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then, one text later, Prabhupada is explaining very nicely then also. So we know that it's not up to us actually, if we act in material life, if we are victorious or not, or defeated. It's controlled by material nature according to a karma and everything, but it's ultimately under the control of the Lord. So that's why here Prabhupada then further explains from the Lord's perspective now how you can look at that, which is quite funny actually. So he is saying that whether we are defeated or victorious, the Supreme Lord is always victorious because everyone acts under His directions. Because we know, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sarcharacharam, that material nature, it's simply acting under the Lord's direction. And if you see it from that point of view, then you can see that for us, okay, we might struggle very hard, we want to achieve some particular goal, but then for the Lord, whether we are successful or not, for Him it is always a victory in the sense that, well, ultimately He is always in control of it, in being in control of material nature. But having said that, now coming back to, still, we know the Lord has always, his wonderful brain as we hear today, He's always thinking on how to deliver the soul. So that's his real victory then, if he succeeds in that, to deliver a fallen soul, to bring them back to their constitutional position of their loving exchange with Him. So there in 6.16.14, the Purple Prabhupada is explaining that the living entities are loitering in the material world, suffering, and when they are instructed by the Lord about Bhagavad Dharma, and they adopt it, that is the victory for the Lord, for He then reclaims these fallen souls. And yeah, because the context here is that, as far as I remember, I think Chitraketu Maharaj is glorifying Lord Sankarshan as one of the things he's mentioning of being that the Lord Himself instructs about devotional service to Him, Bhagavad Dharma. And the reason and the significance about it is, as Prabhupada explains here, is that by those instructions, if someone actually follows, then he can be delivered, and that's the real victory of the Lord. So, okay, so now I can go a little bit into the pastime here of how, for example, these glories of devotional service are being of pure devotees and between pure devotees are discussed. Even in circumstances like on the battlefield there between Vritrasura and Lord and Indra. But so how, briefly to go through, so how it actually goes is, it's like in Bhagavatam, it doesn't go chronologically, it's actually, it's nice, it goes first to Vritrasura and then it goes explaining the background, because then Maharaj Parikshit, upon seeing, and even Lord Indra himself at one point, he's expressing his surprise to Vritrasura. How can it be that you're such a ferocious demon, but then you're speaking the highest philosophy and you're exhibiting those devotional qualities so extraordinarily? So how can it be that you're obviously a great devotee, but in a body of a demon? And so then later after this pastime, then Parikshit Maharaj also inquires about that from Shukadeva Goswami. And then Shukadeva Goswami explains his previous life. He explains how actually there was previously Chitraketu Maharaj. He was, before becoming a pure devotee, he was a great king, the emperor of the whole world here, and everything perfect. He was ruling perfectly, taking care perfectly of his citizens. He was so liked by everyone, adored by everyone. But there was one problem, that he had many qualified wives, but endowed with so many great qualities, but somehow they were not able to give him a son. And so that's why actually he married millions of wives, because one after the other he married and trying to get a son, but couldn't. That's how the Aksharas explain how he got so many wives. But so then one day Angiri Rishi, seeing him in this mood of, although everything being perfect, but still he was very dissatisfied, very regretful of not being able to get a son, because in Vedic culture it's not just I want to have a son because it's nice, but there is also the idea if you're not a pure devotee as it was at that time, from the Karmakanda point of view, that Putra, the word name of son, means one who can deliver you from the hell, Put. And so that idea is there as well, that you need to get a good son, so that just in case that who will protect you from falling down into hell, but being able to stay up in Pitraloka or some other higher planet, and because he will offer oblations on your behalf to the Lord. So Chitraketu Maharaj, he was hell-bent to wanting a son, but then, and Angiri Rishi could understand that. That's why at that point he didn't give him directly, he didn't preach to him transcendental knowledge, but he inquired from him, okay, I see you're lamenting, what's the cause? And then he explains to him, and then he blesses him with giving him special sweet rice oblations that he gets from performing some yagya for Tvashta, which is ironic, because then the same Tvashta, this Prajapati, this demigod, is the one who then performs the yagya where Vritrasura, as the demon, appears with his desire to kill Indra in revenge for what happened with his other son, with Vishwarup. But so he gets this sweet ras, gives it to his first wife, to Kritatyuti, and she then gets a son. But Angya Rishi already had warned him actually that this son, he will be Harsha Shoka. He will be a cause of great jubilation, but also of lamentation. And Chitaketa Maharaj, he doesn't take it seriously. He thinks the Shoka part, the lamentation part, he thinks, well, that just perhaps it means because he's my only son, and so long everyone waited for him, so he will be pampered so much, he might not be very obedient. So in that sense, he might cause some lamentation, but that's fine. But then, what he doesn't realize that actually it runs otherwise. That it so happens that then Chitaketa Maharaj and his first wife Kritatyuti, they're so jubilant with their son and devote all their love and their energy, their time to him, that then all his other co-wives get neglected, and they become so envious that they actually end up finding as the only solution to kill Harsashoka, the son, so that the king again would be able to devote time to them. That's under illusion, under envy, how crooked one gets to think, because they didn't consider, well, if that happens, then it's a catastrophe and he won't be able to actually devote themselves to them again. But so that's why they poisoned then Harsashoka, and so and all the king himself and his wife and even all the other people there, they broke out in such intense lamentation, and he was like, he got even unconscious at one point and lying there at the bed of the son, and so then at that time Angya Rishi comes again, and this time he takes Narad Muni with him, and because now they see that the king, and with this dramatic event, he might be more receptive to actually hear transcendental knowledge, and so they preach to him. And first, like the king says, he recognizes, oh, two great saintly persons are coming here. So he tells a whole list of different saints and explains, well, I assume you might be one of these, because I have heard that these all particular saints, that they, out of the causeless mercy, they travel freely throughout the universe to come to conditioned souls like myself, to give transcendental knowledge, to deliver us. So with no material motive, that's the only spiritual motive that they travel with. And so I think you are one of these. And so then Angya Rishi reveals himself, yes, I'm the same saint who came to you previously and who gave you the benediction of the Harsashoka, of the son. And so then he preaches to him and explains obviously how he shouldn't lament, how to understand that this is not a eternal relationship between the father and son and all of that. And then Narad Muni even, at one point, he then brings back Harsashoka and who then also preaches to the parents, starting off famously that when Narad Muni actually tells him, so please, dear son, see how greatly lamenting are your loving parents and all the other people. You may please come back and stay some longer in this body as a great prince here and enjoy. And then he explains to him, first thing he says, which parents? Like, I had him to tell us, well, I had so many different species, so many different lives, I had so many different parents, whom are you talking about? And so, obviously that itself then gives great renunciation or transcendental relief to also all the people assembled there, seeing this being spoken, this knowledge by their own son there, and so he gives further explanations about that, and so then in this way they're all relieved, and even the other wives, they greatly regret how they poisoned their son, and they perform atonement at the bank of the river Yamuna and so forth. And so, but then Narad Muni, as I said, he instructs Chitaketa Maharaj to recite one particular mantra by reciting which within 7 days he then got the darshan of Lord Sankarshan, and so he attained perfection. And and then he as a byproduct, he also attained the rulership of the Vidyadhara planet, and he was traveling in those airplanes then throughout the universe and singing the glories of the Lord. And so, but then it so happens one time he comes upon seeing a great assembly of great sages again, like such as Narad Muni, how they were assembled and hearing from Lord Shiva on Bhagavad Katha. But the extraordinary scene that is sees there is that Lord Shiva being there preaching, but being in that way and being the greatest Vaishnava, being so exemplary, should be so exemplary, but then he was sitting there with Mother Parvati, his wife, right on his lap, embracing her while preaching. And so Chitaketa Maharaj, he jokingly points this out, oh, how can it be? Such a personality, Lord Shiva, you should be exemplary, but then how you're acting in a way that people might misunderstand you to be just like an ordinary man attached to sense gratification with his wife. And so then, but Mother Parvati doesn't understand this as a joke, she takes it seriously and she curses him. And that's how he then gets cursed to become a demon in his next life as Vritrasura. But it's explained, it's all the arrangement of the Lord, because he decided that, well, for millions of years he's traveling there with the Vidyadharas, glorifying me, but I want him directly back to me, to my spiritual abode, to Vaikuntha. So that's why he arranges for Mother Parvati to curse Chitaketa Maharaj, and in that way, then as Vritrasura, he immediately after birth, so to say, the demigods attack him, and then, of course, then first they actually get beaten up, and they have to go to Lord Brahma, and so it takes some time, but still, soon then he gets killed by Indra, and in that way comes to go back to Godhead, which the Lord wants, and which Chitaketa Maharaj obviously also wanted. When he appears then as Vritrasura from the how actually what happened previously, it's altogether it's a long past time actually, it's many chapters, it's a really nice, amazing section there in the 6th canto, that actually Indra at one time he was enjoying being worshipped by all his associates in the heavenly planets, and when his spiritual masters Brihaspati went in one time, he neglected to pay his obeisances to him or to even recognize his presence in this as he should. And so then Brihaspati, without saying anything, he just leaves. And but Indra, he is so intelligent at least that he immediately understands, oh, when I did something wrong. And so he, in the open assembly of all being just having been worshipped by all those other great personalities at the next moment, and so he is that greatness he has, even though we see quite a few mistakes that he does in Srimad Bhagavatam, but still we see his greatness also. So he immediately regrets his mistake and openly condemns himself very heavily there for having offended his spiritual master. And so then he immediately tries to find his spiritual master to seek forgiveness, pacify him, but Brihaspati, he completely disappeared. He didn't allow himself to be found by Indra. And so Indra then was in great anxiety. And you might think might also look harsh from one point of view, like just, okay, one time he forgot to recognize his spiritual master, pay his obeisances, but immediately he regrets and would be ready to follow his fate, but he doesn't even allow him, and rather then this whole big pastime unfolds, that Indra, so to really get taught a lesson and to teach us, all of us, the lesson, hearing it from Srimad Bhagavatam, he can't find Brihaspati, so then, and soon after then the demons understand that with their spiritual master Shukracharya telling them, okay, now is the time, attack them, and they get beaten up very badly, and then in their despair they approach Lord Brahma, seek help from him, and then Lord Brahma, he advises them that, okay, Brihaspati, he's fed up now, you gotta wait for that, but you can take as your spiritual master Vishwarup, he is also a very qualified Brahmana, the son of Tvashta, so approach him and he will accept, he will give you all the blessings that you need, he will do the puja for you, but he tells them actually already at that time that, but just tolerate whatever he's doing, tolerate his activities, which he indicates then, because he knows that Vishwarup, he's the son of Tvashta, who's a demigod, a Prajapati, but then his mother is actually from the demoniac family. I think Rajana or someone is mentioned at the beginning of 6th canto. And so that's why he naturally has affection for the demons as well. So that's what creates this tricky situation. So then he does agree to become the priest, even though first he actually kind of tells them, well, you might think, okay, you're the great demigods, and what an honor for me to accept post as your spiritual master, but actually he explains, actually for a pure Brahmana, he doesn't want to become a priest of anyone, because it automatically, you become obliged to them, and you become partial, and you get remuneration from them and everything, so it actually puts you down in the level of your Brahminical status. Whereas it's much better if you practice like Shilonjana, just accepting poverty, accepting whatever grains you find on the marketplace left behind or on the fields left behind, like that. But then he does accept, and he does give them actually then this Narayana Kavacha, this shield directly empowered by the Lord himself, with which Lord Indra then takes, accepting these mantras, and with which then he's empowered that they then easily defeat the demons again. But then one day it so happens that he sees how Vishwarup, when he does his, on behalf of the demigods, his oblations to the Lord, he then secretly also offers oblations on behalf of the demons to pacify the Lord on behalf of the demons as well, because he has, as mentioned, this affection for them as well, because of his mother's side. But what does Indra do? He doesn't consider, oh, okay, previously I've offended my spiritual master, I got in all this trouble, that then we had to go to Lord Brahma. He instructed us to go approach Vishwarup. He mercifully accepted it and gave us his blessings, gave him the Narayana Kavacha, so that now I'm comfortably situated again, being in the upper hand over the demons. He forgets all of that. All that he sees is, oh, how can it be he's offering oblations on behalf of the demons, so then by his blessings they again might also become powerful, and that I might get into trouble. And so his solution, he chops off all the 3 heads of Vishwarup. So it's mentioned he had one for drinking wine, one for eating grains, and one for drinking somaras. So all 3 heads he chops off, and they become some birds. So yeah, it's quite an amazing part in Bhagavatam, a lot of action and things. So then, yeah, in revenge for that, then the father Tvashta, the father of Vishwarup, he then performs a yajna where he wants to get a person who is able to kill Indra, and so that's then Vritrasura. But actually, it ends up, as it's mentioned there, the century is very similar as someone who is being killed by Indra, who is the enemy of Indra, in that way. That's what it ends up with. But so this Vritrasura, yeah, he's a gigantic body. He's reaching up to the sky. His hair and beard is all of red, like molten copper. And yeah, there's a description like that. And his sun's eyes are blazing like the sun, midday scorching sun. But then also I was thinking you can give some credits also to the demigods that at that point, still the Indra, and they did have the guts to still immediately attack him actually. Like imagine, it's like when you hear the description of like everyone thought, yeah, it's like the end of the universe, like the appearance of this demon, Vritrasura. But still they actually did try to fight him, but then of course they got beaten up, all the weapons got swallowed by him. Explained, so then they firstly then they pray in great anxiety, pray to Lord Vishnu directly actually there at the battlefield, and Vishnu then appears. There's some other times you can talk about this. Very nice also how the Lord actually, he's pleased, obviously, in the great anxiety to pray to him. He's the protector of them, even though they have some material motives, so he comes but he does then actually instruct them how you should not approach me for material desires. It's very foolish actually. And then he also justifies kind of, because they actually, for offering all other different kinds of beautiful prayers, then they come to the point of saying, oh yeah, you appeared in this incarnation, that incarnation, always to protect your devotees. So please appear now also to protect your devotees and kill this demon. But then Lord Vishnu tells them actually why this time he's not going to do it. Because he tells them that actually, okay, someone is a Kripana who approaches the Lord for material desires, but then if the other person being approached fulfills those desires, he's even more foolish. So, and I'm not so foolish, so I'm not going to fulfill your desires like that. But but then, of course, at the same time, he does not let them down. So then that's why he creates the solution of them, telling them to approach the Dichi Muni to beg for his bones, for his body, from which then the Vishwakarma, the architect of the demigod, then prepares the thunderbolt for Indra, which then and the Lord directly assures them also that this weapon will be directly empowered personally by me again, and so it will be without fail, so you don't need to worry. And also he assures him also, so you see also still how personal the Lord is. He doesn't, even though devotees might come with impure intentions, like they're the demigods for their material protection and material enjoyment, but he also is very personal there as well. He assures them, and you don't even need to actually fear too much about Vritrasura, because he's actually a devotee. He's not envious of you. So only like a real demon who is full of envy, he can do any ferocious thing, but don't worry, he is actually a devotee. He's not envious, so he assures them like that. So yeah, I guess I'll end then somewhere here. So that's how, and it's amazing then how you see that Vritrasura, so being in the body of a demon, and knowing also like what Indra did and everything, why Vritrasura was created. So he does just as Indra, more in the like a demon would do. You would assume that he just like what a lowly sinful creature you are, just for a selfish desire. You just killed mercilessly your spiritual master and all of that, who is my brother, so and I'll revenge for that and like that. But then he does comes to the point then but actually I know that you have this thunderbolt, and so if I get killed by your thunderbolt, if you use it according to direction as the Lord instructed you, then I also don't mind. All I want then is that my body, I'm not attached to my body, it shall be used by other living entities, can be eaten up by vultures and jackals. But what I only aspire for is that also devotees, like such as Narad Muni, great personalities, might bless my body with the dust of the lotus feet, that they might step on me. And then he explains further then that all expresses then, from that point onwards, then he reveals his pure devotion and says things that all I aspire for is to become the servant of the Lord and be in their association and all of that. So and he amazingly instructs Lord Indra and tries to encourage him that, hey, you are the one who is on the side of having this weapon directly from the Lord, and which is unfailing. So you don't worry. You just use it. Because actually at one point he was Indra, when he didn't immediately use the thunderbolt. First he tried with his club at one point striking Vritrasura, but Vritrasura simply with his left hand he caught the club and then wielded it back to against Airavata,